Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on the FareCompare weekly video podcast. My name is Rick Cini. I'm the co-founder and CEO of FareCompare.com, episode number 43. It's good to be back, just back from a 2-week trip from Italy or to Italy. It was a huge success. Family had fun. Snapchat worked for the kids. Everything in life is good. So anyway, it's good to be back with you. And we're going to chat a little bit about a couple things. Certainly what was on my mind in Italy was some safe traveling tips. We've got Cuba now with a new round of announcements. Now Havana finally being announced after almost a dozen of the other cities were announced a month and a half ago. Also, one of our events that we're highlighting as well, some tangoing involved in that. And then we'll also take a question from a customer. I think the question today is about stopovers or layovers. So just jumping right in with our editor from the site from California today, Ann McDermott. Hey, Ann.
Hey, Rick. Welcome back. And I just want to tell anybody who's watching this, no, there's not going to be a tango demonstration.
You know what? This camera, no, I'm laughing because my daughter loves dance. She's been dancing since she was little. So we have this thing where we watch So You Think You Can Dance Together, which we did watch last night. And they've got basically, I guess the range of ages is from 8 to 13, and a couple of these, 8 or 9-year-olds, especially, there's just one little guy that looks like he's about 2.5 feet high. They all do a form of tango and all this ballroom dancing, and it's pretty darn amazing. I'm like looking at it going, wow, this is unbelievable. So anyway, we won't be getting into localized demonstrations unless Ann is going to pop up from her desk there.
No, thank you. No, thanks.
As far as safe traveling tips are concerned, I just got back from Italy. It was interesting. At many of the trade stations where I was in Italy, they actually had announcements in both Italian and English talking about pickpockets, saying that there's a lot of particular pickpockets in a particular area. Huh. This was in Spezia and a couple places in Rome on some of those. So, look, I know it's not great to have to talk about, keeping your personal safety up when you're traveling, but in general, and a lot of people, especially in off-the-beaten places or very crowded places, like when we were in Florence at the Duomo, lots of pickpockets there as well. So it's important that you leave what's most important at home, right? You just don't want to take anything that's extremely important to you. Now, I mean, cash, passports. I can tell you we left our passports at the hotel in the safe, so I typically don't like to carry my passport with me anywhere. If you're actually carrying a wallet, it's better to have it in your front pocket, for example, than your back pocket in any cases. If you feel a bump from anybody, even if it's accidental, it's going to be your wallet. So anytime you're bumped or anything like that, make sure you have everything in good place. The other thing, too, is, each country is a little bit different, right? So, your personal safety is important. You should read the State Department travel website. They have all sorts of little tidbits of what to do, where to do, and really there's common sense involved too. You're in a different place. You don't speak the language. I had some of the most fun I had. We actually found a little wine shop in a sort of a off the beaten path place, and we went there 3 times during our stay and hung out with the locals, and neither one of us could actually speak to each other. Other than uno, due, tre, quattro, cinque. So I knew how to count a little bit, and vino is sort of the common word, so it was actually
international
fun.
Language.
Yeah, so I had a good time, but there's always, keep your head on a swivel, watch what's going on. A lot of people go to these places and they have guides or some sort of person that's actually helping you go through some of these things. Yeah. They will help you out with local tips as well. So just be very aware when you're traveling. We've seen what's happened over in Europe. I didn't keep us from going to Europe. We had a great time, so please just stay safe.
Yeah, and I just want to say so much of this is common sense. Same you don't become a victim of anything. You know, you're staying aware, alert.
Yeah.
But I think so many of us, and I know this is true for me, when you go on vacation, it's like, oh, I'm in vacation mode. I don't have to do anything. And look, all these wonderful locals, how much they love me. Some of them love you for your money, but that's true for some, you know, international visitors that come to the U.S. So just everybody, just you know, little common
Hey,
sense.
look, I've seen almost. I've traveled so much. I've seen almost every scam. My daughter had a gypsy come up to her, and of course, wanted to basically lock on the finger cuff. I said, "Please step away. You can Snapchat about this later." So just
Yeah.
be aware and talk to people that have been there. I look, my sister's, excuse me, my daughter's friend, they just got back from Italy 2 weeks ago. Her entire wallet was pickpocketed out of her purse. So it happens a
Yeah.
lot. So just be careful, and just stay safe. That's all there is to it. I mean, keep your head on a swivel. And I think for the most part, people, especially in certain locations, you know when there's potential issues going on. You know when to let your 12-year-old scurry off on their own. You know when you've sort of made the wrong turn somewhere. Just let that antenna help you out.
Right, right. And, you know, for one thing, if your trip is perfect, well, that's lovely. If your trip is imperfect and you run into some of these scams and stuff and you don't lose everything, you do have some great stories to tell when you get back home.
And I would note too, we did a lot of walking on this trip, and we used a variety of mapping features. And when you're using the walking features on this app, sometime it will take you through some of the craziest back alleyways. So be sure and hit the button on there that says "Take the main routes." So you want to be you certainly want to be aware of that as you're traveling on some of these, because
Yeah.
it was fun. And by the way, there was a couple of things at the forum that were awesome in Rome. They had actually sort of a virtual how it might have looked sort of light show at night. That was
Wow.
really awesome. They had it for both the forum and for um, a walking version of it, and also in the forum area for Caesar. So really some cool things to do. And again, it's one of these things where just be aware. Those electronic apps are great, but learn them. And the other thing that I
Yeah.
used too was a translate function. So it
Oh.
was kind of funny. You typed in what it was, and we were all sitting at the table going, well, how do we ask for the check after a 3-hour dinner when you can't get anybody to come to your table? And it was kind of funny because there was 3 different ways to say it, and only one of them caught their attention. So it was actually kind of fun.
I'll tell you what else would have caught their attention if you got up to walk out the door.
Yeah, so we actually talked about that too. It said, well, all we have to do is get up and get about 10 feet away from the front door. I guarantee you we'll get some service.
Let's change directions and talk about Cuba. Cuba, new
Yeah,
stuff has been going on.
this has been an ongoing sort of chat, but the new announcement finally of the top city in
Hmm.
Cuba, the capital city of Havana, and the airlines that are actually getting to fly to Havana. Now, you'd expect that the main airlines, the top airlines that control 80% of traffic, would certainly get routes. Yes, American, Delta, United, Southwest, but you've also got Spirit, you got Frontier in there,
Hmm.
JetBlue, Alaska Airlines actually got a route from LA. You know, the interesting thing, and I noticed with some notable exceptions, the policymakers, at least our federal policymakers, didn't get a nonstop from Washington D.C. area. I didn't see anything from Baltimore or from Reagan or Dulles. So I thought that was interesting. And you know, you basically have Delta flying from New York, but that's only one flight out of New York. Pretty much, if you're going to go into Cuba or Havana, you're going to be transiting through the southeast, either South Florida, and I guess Charlotte will be a main hub for American there as well.
Yeah, and I think I had read that Boston was disappointed that it didn't make the list. Now, but at the same time, I'm amazed that there are so many airlines. It's like it seems as though anybody who wanted a route got one, or am I crazy?
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly I was surprised to see to Spirit get one, and to some degree, I was surprised to see Frontier. But I think there's a fairness protocol as part of this. Certainly, you just can't continue to give all the traffic to the 80%, to the 4 airlines that control 80%. So it's interesting. Alaska is from LA, not from Seattle, for example. Frontier is actually flying out of Miami, not Denver, where their base is. So that was a little bit odd. But you also have the other destinations. There's not quite a dozen other destinations where these airlines also are flying into as well.
Now,
So
for those other,
let's talk a little bit about sort of what the issues are and what's going on as you're there. The price points were really cheap when they first were announced for the other cities. They haven't seen the Havana stuff yet, but now it's pretty expensive to fly in there. Your ATM doesn't work. Credit cards don't work very well. Cell service, not so great. Internet service, not so great. So if you're thinking about taking, like in my case, a couple teenagers, Snapchat's not going to work, and you're going to have familial issues as part of this. So it's going to take a while for the infrastructure to catch up.
How long do you think?
Well, I think it'll probably be a decade, but I think maybe half a decade before you see really good improvement. It will be, think of it sort of as a Cuba adventure, because without the currency, without the credit cards, without the internet, it almost sounds like camping. So yeah, you'll have hotels. People from Europe do actually travel to Cuba, so there is some infrastructure there. What I hope doesn't happen, Anne, is this huge gold rush, massive resorts, big tall buildings, because one of the things that interests me about Cuba is the fact that it hasn't had a bunch of commercialization the last 4 or 5 decades.
Yeah, and it's sort of, in a way, sort of frozen in time, at least as far as Americans are concerned. The look of it, at least from pictures I've seen, but it does look like it'd be a great vacation.
Yeah, it's sort of like hearkening back to some Godfather episodes on what it was like before Cuba fell. So it was interesting. So look, I think again, Cuba is going to be a huge destination over the next decade, and it's going to probably be one of the top destinations. It's easy to get to. Essentially, it's a 50 to 30-minute flight from South Florida. So basically, it's a touch and go. It's wink, wink now. So you buy your ticket, as long as you maintain some sort of log, which probably means posting to Instagram or Facebook, and any of those things. If the State Department decides to look at some of that stuff, wink, wink, we'll never look at it. And essentially, you don't have to do much. You do have to get the visa, so be sure and make sure you do that. Expedited visa are very expensive, so last-minute trips can be expensive. So just be prepared and have some fun with it.
We have a question from a customer, and trust me, the customers are glad you're back to answer these things. This is from Jay in Bentonville, and he seems to be an adventurous fellow. He says, I'm looking to travel to Hong Kong, and I see that most of the flights have a short layover in Japan or Africa or other locations, and he wants to know, is there a way to lengthen the layover time so that he could do some quick sightseeing, maybe between 4 and 6 hours in the layover city? And then, if that's possible, is there a place in some of these airports or somewhere where he can, like a locker, to put his luggage while he's doing the sightseeing?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so let's talk a little bit first about airline tickets. A couple simple rules. If you're making a domestic connection, let's say you're flying from Bentonville to Chicago, and that layover time maximum is 4 hours. But if you were flying from Chicago, for example, cross-border, let's say to Cuba or the Caribbean or anywhere in Europe or Canada, you also have up to a 24-hour connection. So easily you can actually stay overnight, do some sightseeing. You have to use advanced booking techniques, what's called multi-city booking techniques. And this sometimes, if you're not really good at those kind of advanced features, an agent can help you out there and just tell them you want those layovers. Some airlines actually have deals with agents as well where they waive the stopover rule, so that you can actually extend the stopover. Like I've seen them where you can stop over in Paris up to 2 days on the same ticket and hang out there and then go on to your final destination. Typically that's an area where agents have some of those things. So this is one of the cases where having an agent to help you out is worthwhile. As far as having lockers at the airport. Not only do these airports, especially an airport like in Hong Kong, they have lockers. They have a place where you can actually, I've seen them with capsules where essentially you have a sleeping area where you're in sort of a, for lack of a better term, an egg carton, if you were an
Yeah.
egg. And they also have places where you can put your bag. This also means that you need to pack light. I just got back 2 weeks in Italy. Everybody had a carry-on only plus another backpack along with them, which is their personal item. Nobody had any issues. We were on dozens of different trains. We actually did leave our bags in one case in a locker. So it's about packing small too. If you have, 4 steamer trunks, it makes it a little more complicated.
Right, right. And I have seen in Europe lockers by piers and
I've
ferry
seen it at
boat
the train
areas.
stations as
Train,
well.
yeah. So it's you don't see it here. I don't think it's been years since I've seen a locker in a U.S. airport. But
Right, and the lockers and the check stations tend to have smaller items in them. You don't see steamer trunks being checked at those things. So just pack light. You can absolutely do it. He's talking about going. It's interesting from Hong Kong, since it's halfway around the world. Some people go over the Atlantic. Some people go over the Pacific. Connections in Japan. Connections in, for example, the Middle East. I know. Emirates and Qatar, whichever one you want to call it, those airlines fly the other way around. So those are interesting places to stop over as well. But just remember, sometimes they'll waive those, and an agent is your best bet if you want to see some of those cool waived rules. In some cases, you can stop over in a variety of places.
and now what everyone has been waiting for, the Tango Festival in Buenos Aires, and it's going to coincide, it looks like, pretty much with the Olympics. So if you get sick of watching people win medals, you can go dancing.
Well, even more interesting is you can actually fly to Argentina. It's cheaper, and then make your way over to Brazil and catch the Tango Festival. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, my daughter and I have this thing where we once a week watch So You Think You Can Dance when it's showing, and love to watch that kind of stuff. So to actually see the Tango Festival would be, in my opinion, an interesting event to attend. So it's on my bucket list. Not going to be able to make it this year, but I definitely want to do that. And again, you have to check out the Eventrist app, and we also have the stuff on our website now as well. You can check out all those events just by going to FareCompare.com Eventrist, or you can also download the app from there as well. So check that out on both iTunes and the Google Play Store.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks.